A very curious, playful individual who has an insatiable desire to grow and expand. Since I was 8 years old, I just knew that I was in this life to find a way to support, inspire others to also live very much in full expression of who they are. I coined this term SLIP, successful leader inflection point. So your success and your enjoyment of life, they're going together. And you're like, this is great. I'm working really hard. I'm playing the game. Things are going well. And then there's a moment in time where you start plateauing and you start to say, wait a second. I feel like my success is still kind of going, but I'm not sure that I'm enjoying this. I'm not sure that this is the life that I thought I wanted. What we hear on the other side is, the world's still chaotic, but I feel so clear on who I am, so I can make decisions really easily. I feel like it's easy to stay calm no matter what happens, because I know I'm gonna be okay. When I think of being in alignment with my values, it's really in each moment, am I in integrity with how I want to be showing up? And absolutely, it tends to look like having inner peace, showing up with wonder and curiosity, and really appreciating the moment. And it's very freeing, isn't it, to start to live in that essence and in that coherence, and realize you don't need to command the ocean. You don't need to control it. You're just part of it, and to really just flow with it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Sincerely Show. I'm your host, Katherine Duchuk. The Sincerely Show is a place, and it's a journey, and it's a movement. It's a movement towards living our lives in a way that is more sincerely human. And it's a journey. It's a journey that travels through our lives, through some of the heaviest and darkest of periods, through to periods of awakening, through to becoming more whole and more complete, and through to lives dedicated to service and contribution to our world, to humanity, to our planet. And it's a place. It's a place of joy. It's a place of love. It's a place of curiosity. It's a place of no judgment. It's a place of psychological safety. Welcome to the Sincerely Show. Let's begin. I am so happy to welcome Florence Shaffer to our show today. Florence, welcome.
So nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's beautiful to have you. Florence, I ask everyone to introduce themselves because I think there's beauty in introducing ourselves in a way that is authentically you. And so why don't you start off and let us feel into and listen into who Florence Shaffer is.
I love this question because it always begs, where do we start, right? I tend to start in a way that makes it legible to the current world. So, I used to be a former technology executive, and have really worked in transformation always throughout my life, different companies, BMW, Burberry, Estée Lauder, all of those things. But really who I am is that through thread that went through all of these experiences in life. And I would say I'm a very curious, playful individual who has an insatiable desire to grow and expand and realize my full human potential. And in doing that, I think as many people do in their journey, realize that to realize one's full potential, it really looks back at how you're serving society, community, your friends, and bringing your gift back into the world. And so for me, that has been since I was 8 years old. I just knew that I was in this life to find a way to support, inspire others to also live very much in full expression of who they are. And the longer I've been on this journey, the more I realize that the best way to do that is actually just to be and embody my full self, unapologetically, as just fully radiant as I can. And I think what's so exciting about that is when you start to realize that you feel so coherent in who you are and how you show up that you're not really doing anything. And somehow you're giving other people permission to just show up as who they want to be.
I'll share with you a line that someone shared with me about 3 years ago at an executive retreat. Florence, you're a human being, not a human doing.
Yes.
Welcome to being, Florence.
Mm-hmm. I was going to try to tell my American-born South Korean mom, hardworking farmer, South Korean dad, Catholic upbringing, American capitalist, inherited being, that being is not doing. You want to talk about like so many superpowers in there, right? That just out of the gate, I felt like I was so grateful for all the opportunities that were just in front of me, and I suppose skills that came in handy for the system and the game we live in. But as that game is shifting, and as my desires were so clear that, it's great to win that game, but that's not really what fuels us. That's not really what fulfills us. And starting to unlearn some of those things that, maybe were useful in the past and we can really honor, but then also saying, yeah, but that's outlived its utility. And maybe it was more of a protection mechanism for how I thought I had to navigate my life in the system. And it's fascinating to start to release many of those things and just realize life feels a lot lighter, easier. And it's really the antithesis of what we're taught, which is you have to strive more, work harder. Even these words like resiliency, I think a lot of them have become distorted. Health, like we look at all these industries and so many of them are just about optimizing something that is not meant to be optimized, right? Like I joke that we have created industries because we've forgotten how to be, right? So we have all these holidays, all these gyms, all these longevity. And when you think about that, we're really selling you back rest, your own health, and and eating well, and moving. And I mean, I love those industries. I love doing all of those things. I do all of those things, but it makes me laugh that we've created an industry out of these things, and then people feel like they have to perform and optimize those activities.
Wow. Selling you back rest, health, time. What a beautiful way. And all of these sub-industries that are created to sell you back something that should have always been yours, or that could have always been yours.
Mm-hmm. And that are free.
that are free.
I think I realized that when there was a company in New York, somebody told me, they said, you can buy a membership to go sit in an empty room so that you can just sit there and be. And I thought, it sounds on one hand brilliant because it's so noisy, but on the other hand, I thought, how far have we come that we have to pay for a place where we can just sit quietly?
Love it. So the world you're describing is this extractive and performative world that humanity has built, the best I can estimate, over several thousand years. And it's culminated probably in the last 50 to 100 years into something unimaginable. Talk more about, because I want to give people a bit more sense of your lived experience up until now, and then we'll dig into what you're doing now. So talk more about the system and the game. And your words up front was, well, in this world, I'll describe myself as a former executive. So talk a bit more about what you achieved and performed to in that world. And then we'll go into the world today.
Yeah. So what I find so fun about this, right, is in this moment in time, we look back and all this performance and this extractive system has given us so much abundance. And I think when I entered into the game, I saw unconsciously, I'm sure, I did not understand this at the age of 8, but I jumped into the game thinking, okay, the game gives me clarity. The game gives me stability, and basically says, if you work really hard and you be successful and you know how to play the game, you will be rewarded. And you will be rewarded with a great life. And what does that great life mean, right? It means joy, it means great relationships, it means really good health, it means access to fun things and cool careers and all of these open doors. And
that's the promise.
That's the promise. And I think there's a couple of funny things about that, because now you've trained your entire operating way of being, your operating system, to learn how to play that game. And what's funny is people then get to a point where they don't need to play that game anymore. You've amassed all the abundance, the wealth, but then you don't actually know how to enjoy it or how to be or how to do all those things, right? So this was the typical story. We heard people having midlife crisis, people starting to realize all of these things. And I'll start talking about my journey in a second here, but it's really interesting. I coined this term SLIP, successful leader inflection point, where your promise of I'll do it for you. It's a graph. I'm an engineer, so I'm a nerd. But basically imagine this graph where your performance and your success and your enjoyment of life, they're going together. And you're like, this is great. I'm working really hard. I'm playing the game. Things are going well. And then there's a moment in time where you start plateauing and you start to say, wait a second. I feel like my success is still kind of going, but I'm not sure that I'm enjoying this. I'm not sure that this is the life that I thought I wanted, right? And so you start to get this kind of quiet dissatisfaction, but the world's moving along and you just go, okay, well, maybe that's me. Maybe I just need to go talk to a therapist. Maybe I just need new friends. Maybe I just need a new wardrobe, whatever thing you think. And then you start to say, hold on, like it seems to be getting a little worse. And now actually my performance isn't that great. So then you start to go, oh boy, like, okay, my health is, now I'll get into the details, but basically you start to realize these things are diverging. And that's what I was interested in. I was like, well, I just don't believe in constraints. I'm like, why is this not working? Let me look at this on a systems level. So, but for my personal experience, what it looked like was I, went to, my dream was always to go, I thought I'd go to Berkeley, do international relations. I wanted to be a diplomat. As I said, my father is from South Dakota. My mother's from South Korea. They met when they were almost 40. So I was a diplomat by trade, and talk about a superpower, understanding different cultures and understanding how to translate between them, right? And I joke that the Silicon Valley is I'll call myself, I realize now that I'm a third culture kid, because here I had these two inherited cultures that I grew up in, but then really physically I was in the Bay Area at, a very exciting time, seeing and learning all about sort of that mindset. So very much entered the world with a growth mindset. Opportunities are available based on whatever you want to do, you can make happen. That was really the belief. So I'm about to go to Berkeley. My very strict mother said, everything was about college. We weren't allowed to really socialize or do anything like that. We were very focused. She said, well, if you want to go visit the colleges, you can. And I thought, oh, an opportunity to socialize, something that I can do. So I had no plan to go to Pomona or Harvey Mudd College, but I thought, let me go visit them. So senior year of high school, I go down to visit them. This was one of those life-defining moments where you find something you didn't know that existed. And Harvey Mudd College is this almost like unknown 800-person undergraduate university, as part of the Claremont College Consortium. And it was the first time I was just surrounded by professors and students that were so creative. And it was true building and creation unlimited. And the whole ethos of the school is everyone is there to support your creativity, and they do it within a safe sandbox. So that's not regulations, you can't do this, you can't do this. It's you come up with what you want to build, how you want to create. We teach you to various different things, but we teach you to be a lateral thinker that is coming up with something new. And we help create enough structure that you won't get hurt, and that, we will ensure that whatever you're doing is protected.
An adult sandbox.
Yeah, I was going to say total sandbox of, again, creativity and some of the smartest people in the world I've ever met in my life. And that was also a huge motivator, just to go into an environment and just feel like everyone you can learn from. And that, it was definitely like I felt like I was on a tricycle my whole life. And I was like, oh, these people, they're on a jet. Like, we got a lot of work to do to catch up here. So really inspired by that, changed my mind, told my mom, we're not going to Berkeley. We're actually going to go to Harvey Mudd. And I think that experience really just shaped what was going to be the next 20 plus years of my career, which was my first job, concept design at BMW Design Works, living my best life in Venice Beach, driving the PCH. I've always been a car girl. So here I was at this company that 50% of the work was cool new designs for BMW, and the other half was product design, think like, an IDO. And so this is before smartphones. We were looking at, I won't say which companies, but how do you create a smartphone? What does that look like? What is an Internet of Things table, coffee table in your house? What would that mean? So really dove deep, and it was in these moments that I found out that I loved human-centered design and that experience. And it was very natural for me to always think about the human in my design. One of the professors actually said, even though I was a very solid C student in college, which was horrifying for an A student in the rest of my life, the professor said, you know what your thing is? I said, I absolutely don't, because I thought I was just surviving here. He said, you are the only person in these classes that starts with who is the person who's going to use it, what environment are they in, why do they want to use it, and then I build the product from there. And to me, I was like, well, wouldn't everybody do that? And they said, absolutely not, especially not in an engineering school. So it was that professor who mirrored back to me something that I did not know about myself, something unique that then has really taken me through every part of my career. So, fast forward, I worked at Lucasfilm. I was in a Y Combinator startup that went public a few years ago, a couple of startups that massively did not go anywhere, great learning experiences. I moved to Hong Kong. I worked in Burberry there, really looking after digital solutions. So we're in the China market. How do you keep the essence and ethos of Burberry, but then really translate it into that market? So China, Korea, Japan. So again, I was a diplomat. So I found my way to where I wanted to be without studying that. And worked in Nepal at a healthcare organization that was partnering with Harvard Medical School on how to provide primary health care. so innovative, this product, the way that they were thinking, how they were partnering with the government. I just started to learn really more about complex ecosystems and how to actually deliver against outcomes. Burberry hired me back, and I was the regional CTO for the Americas. So I moved back to the US and really looking at, innovation and what does this look like in this market. And then Estée Lauder poached me from there, and I was the global VP looking after technology innovation, transformation across 30 brands. And so I feel like each of these stepping stones was a different realization and learning of what is transformation, where are we going, and what are we building. I started with products, software, experiences, systems, government, and just kept getting more and more complex. And I think that's what's prepared me for today, which the level of complexity, level of instability, and just trying to understand, well, how do we create real outcomes when there's so much complexity? And coming back to the slip, for me, when I was at Burberry, I was really enjoying my time there. And my boss said something. She saw how stressed out I was. And I was in the office alone in Hong Kong. And I think it was like 10:30 p.m., which was a very normal thing. I was married. That marriage didn't last. He's wonderfully one of my best friends now. Yeah. But the way I was working was not sustainable. And my boss even came over and she saw that day I was quite stressed. I've never cried at work. That night, I thought I was alone in the office, 10:30, and I was just weeping because I was like, I was just exhausted. And she surprised me, and being Korean, I'm like, this is quite embarrassing, because we don't cry, right? We don't have these moments. And at that time, I used to very much pride myself as, I'm not one of those women who goes to the bathroom and cry. Like that's just not who I am or how I operate. And so she came over and she's like, "Are you okay?" She's amazing, amazing woman. And she's like, "What are you so stressed about? We sell trench coats." And it was in that moment that I was like, she's right. What am I doing? And it was then that I started to understand why my whole life, since I was 8, I knew I wanted to work on this human potential. And I let time pass me to get these titles, to make my parents proud, to do these things. And I got there. So why am I not doing what I want to be doing? And so that was kind of the first crack.
I call them collapses.
Yeah.
Before you go forward, can you go a bit? I think we're getting a feel for your mom and the cultural influence of the South Korea side. Mm-hmm. Talk about the South Dakota side, and what are the influences from your father?
Yeah, my father he was the first to go to college. I think his father thought, so what are you doing? That's a waste of money and time. Yeah. But he grew up in a large family, and so not everybody was going to be able to take care of the farm. So he said, look, I got to figure out something to do. He, very hardworking, zero complainer, similar with my mom. Like they both just
they wouldn't
on with it. They just do it. They're in their 80s now. They just like, what are we complaining about? Like life's great. Let's just move forward. My dad accidentally got his PhD. When he told me that, I said, how do you accidentally get a PhD? Now, he is just such a curious mind, and he just kept taking courses. It was a requirement for one of the jobs that he had in New Mexico. And then he just kept taking classes until eventually, basically, they ended up awarding him a PhD. And he worked at the Lawrence Livermore Lab as one does, as a physics researcher. And what's funny about my parents is I never realized how smart they were. I knew they were smart, but they're both very humble people. And especially my father, the way that he speaks, it's always about oh, I have so many projects I want to do. There's, this is so fascinating. I'm learning about this. He has our old brown Encyclopedia Britannicas out. And he's like, you just never know what you could discover. And he'll just read them. He has like 4 papers. He's just always working on something. He had a stack of papers this big of a linear algebra problem that he was working on. And I said, what is that? And he said, oh, I just thought it would be fun to try to figure it out, try to derive it from scratch. I was like, again, as one does. My mom's, creating, it was snail cream, right? The Koreans know for skincare. Snail cream was popular a few years back. So she was creating it from scratch. She was watching YouTube videos at the age in her 70s and just, I walk into the house visiting them, probably from New York, and said, why do we have a terrarium in our kitchen all of a sudden? She's like, oh, I'm making skincare products, for you and your sister, just for fun. So when you look, these are all the things you take for granted. And then you look back and you say, oh, wow, there's a lot of beautiful inherited learnings and things that are there that totally take for granted.
Yeah. It's your petri dish. It's your petri dish. So I think we all now have even a deeper feel of this, highly creative, human-centered engineer, design expert across multiple disciplines, companies that was raised by a very disciplined mother, honorable, disciplined, who is also an engineer in her own way.
She was very entrepreneurial, very,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a father who's incredibly humble and deeply, deeply curious, and also honorable. Of course, you hit a point in Burberry where slip happens. Of course.
And
because you were conditioned, in some ways, you were conditioned to perform, to fit into the system.
absolutely. I also think maybe this is something that kids of immigrant parents talk about. But I think there's some aspect of gratitude that comes with all that focus that the parents have, and really a lot of sacrifice that they've made. And in many ways, when I knew this is what I want to do, this is what would validate my parents' sacrifices.
Yep.
In many ways, I wanted to give them this gift. I wanted to say all of your sacrifice was worth it.
They were worth it. In my case, Florence, I went on defiantly to prove that I could build a better life. Yet what you've just helped me see is the flip side, not the slip, the flip side of that, which is, well, I'm going to honor their sacrifices, in moving countries, in leaving the farm, in getting an education. I need to honor that. Both can be true. Both can be true.
Both can be true. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't mention, but my mother's mom was killed in the Korean War when she was only 6. And so she had older siblings, but this completely changed. Her mother was a very prominent, very successful businesswoman, which is very cool when you think about that time in Korea. And so her life trajectory completely changed. And for her, that meant her entire role in life was, how do I be the mother? This is my framing. How do I be the mother that I didn't have, right? How do I ensure that my kids have all of that support and all of that sacrifice? So it also meant that I confused this idea of love and sacrifice. I thought love is sacrifice, right? So we could do a whole nother podcast about what that looks like in relationships, in my relationship life, but we won't go there. But I think it's starting to understand that I was actually proud to be able to give that gift back to my parents. And once I did, then it really allowed me to free myself up to say, okay, now I want to live for me. And now I want to make my parents proud by being so undoubtedly happy in my life that they can't be anything but proud. And I just came back from a trip to Korea with my mother. It was just a mother-daughter trip. My sister and dad stayed in the Bay Area. And we had such a good time. I saw some cousins I haven't seen for 30 years. Their first comment is, "You're very tall." I thought, I've been tall for a while now. And that's when I realized, oh, I haven't seen you since I was 12 or 13. I'm 6 foot tall, by the way, just to give you a frame of mind. And so it was just this beautiful walk into a culture that I got to celebrate and understand a bit of where I came from. Even though I have been there many times, doing this with just my mom, she's 84. And it was just this beautiful reflection. And she told me, she said, you know, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud to have you as my daughter. And this is something that anyone who's maybe Asian or Indian, a lot of my friends, this is not a simple phrase that comes out. And I thought, oh, wow, for me to be working, doing what I'm doing now, which is something she doesn't even fully understand. What am I doing?
She doesn't need to.
She doesn't need to. And that to me is a recognition that I've made it to where what fulfills me. And I was so, it was sort of an interesting mirroring or external validation that I was quite happy with what this is, but now all of a sudden what is around my external environment they were seeing me as me landed in this new spot.
I love it. I do want to take you back in a second to Burberry and your awakening, what ultimately shook you and awoken you. And it's usually, for most of us, not one thing. It's usually a few things that happen.
I was going to say, I think I'm a great example of the canary in the coal mine that just is still sticks to her pattern until it completely.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I speak quite publicly about the fact that my journey was 3 or 4 collapses over a 9-year period until finally I surrendered.
Yeah,
fully surrendered to love. And so you only go where you're comfortable going, Florence. I think you danced past the most important part. You said you thought love was sacrifice. So much of how we perform, often taught by parents or friends or relatives or school or the system or the game, is in pursuit of a definition of love that for most of us involves sacrificing parts of self in order to receive affirmation or what we call love.
Yeah.
That's not who you are anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, that's correct. I think this whole thing about keeping up with the Joneses.
Right. That is all in pursuit of recognition or affirmation or love.
Exactly. I used to think it was the greed of the individual. And when I started to get to these higher and higher levels of success and access, I started to realize this is about losing your belonging and your social structure. And that's what drives people to keep up with the Joneses. So when I moved from Burberry to my Nepal company, my salary cut, I was much more fulfilled in my work from I'm providing back to society. I'm part of something that is doing this work. And yet what I immediately realized is I was no longer able to afford to hang out with my friends from before. And so I would have to dip into my savings to go on the trips, to do the things, to stay part of that. And it was in that moment that I had the awareness that, oh, this is not about just my fulfillment. It's actually that what keeps people in the lives that they're in is a fear that they're going to lose their friends and their social belonging and that recognition and being seen. And so I thought, okay, this is not...
And a level of love / recognition that is externally referenced from others.
Yeah. And some people said, well, that's lame that, these people wouldn't want to hang out with you anymore. And I said, no.
They don't
that's
know.
Not, I was like, that's not actually, it's not that they don't want to. And they haven't actually, nothing's changed from their perspective. It's that I have shifted and now I have to figure out what this means for me. And one of the realizations I had in that experience was maybe I had flipped too hard in finding something that fulfilled me, but wasn't fully me either. Because it was probably the only nonprofit I could work with, like inside. It was run like a Silicon Valley startup. And I realized, I said, okay, so I understand, like, I call this fragmented optimization. I realized something wasn't working. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go fix that. And what I didn't realize is I threw the baby out with the bathwater, or these other things. You start to realize, like, oh, that wasn't quite it either. And so it was really this coming back to myself and saying, well, who am I? What is important to me? And how do I build a life in coherence with that? But I didn't know how to do that because that is not something easy or a skill we're taught. There's no strategy there. So all of the frameworks that I had previously used to be like, how do I figure this out? That's actually why the company I founded 4 years ago was born. Spoke to more than 250 experts in every single area you could think of and tried to understand, well, how, if I was to build a way to recalibrate myself from making decisions based on that external, extractive, performative system to being intrinsically driven by really who I am and my own coherent being. What's crazy and very amazing is the byproduct is great health, great relationships, joy, and wonderful performance, but not striving, not like being in the ocean and feeling like I think many of us do, especially today, like there's more waves. Now I need to learn how to swim faster. I need to hold my breath longer. I need to get different tools. No, you actually get out of the water and you start to surf and you start to realize, wait a second, I don't have to surf every wave. I'm with the environment because I am coherent. I know myself. I'm grounded. I'm anchored.
You went from being outcome driven, which the extractive system is, being input driven, which based on your own inner wiring and your own soul and essence, your own coherence.
Yeah.
So talk about your company, and then I want to come back to what ultimately brought you to this awakening. Talk about the work that you're doing in the world today.
Yeah, so we often frame ourselves as the first strategic advisory for human flourishing. So it's really, when I come back to that slip, it's how do you can still perform and you have a great life and you're very successful, quote unquote, but actually, how do you create a life worth living for yourself and defined by yourself? So what does human flourishing look like for you? And then how do you live and be in that life? And so what we created was really, like I said, almost like a reset or recalibration of how you think, decide, and operate day to day. And we do a diagnostic across all these whole areas of yourself, the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, social sides. And we say, where are you out of alignment? Where are you working against yourself? Where is there friction? And based on that, we match you with different experts that can then we find the root of what is actually creating that friction, and then we work with you to make 1 or 2 shifts at that deeper level that make everything else simpler. And so diagnostic, matching you with different experts, and then you do a 5-day immersion with 4 to 6 of these experts, all based on your diagnostic. But it's truly a beautiful modern rite of passage where you're taking who you were and you're saying, how do I realign myself and move into the future to live fully in alignment with how I want, without, I think the key point in all of this and what was important to me was, how do I do this without blowing up my life? How do I do this with ease? How do I do this so everything just kind of like very smoothly rearranges itself and everything just feels right on the other side of it? And that's why we built this thing, so that in a few months, while you're still living your life, you can make these adjustments and then we reintegrate them into your life. And what we notice is when people do this, what we hear on the other side is, the world's still chaotic, but I feel so clear on who I am.
Yeah.
So I can make decisions really easily. I feel like it's easy to stay calm no matter what happens because I know I'm going to be okay. And we call it orientation, but your orientation is very clear. There's a lot less noise in your life, and that sort of signal to noise ratio, especially in today's world, is just so critical. Whether you're a leader at work and it's about decision making and where is your company going to go, or it's just about where do I want to spend my time, how do I want to spend it, and how am I present for it versus performing so that I can live my life later.
It's beautiful, Florence. So many of the people that are guests to the Sincerely Show have been through big collapses or multiple, until there's enough that takes us away from our ego or the performative self and where we really find our soul or our essence and build back from there.
Yeah.
Staying with your company and the work that you're doing now, how do you really do this without blowing up your life? How does this happen? Because when we awaken and when we start embracing who we always were, it's not uncommon that the job might not feel right, or the mission of the company might not feel right, or the boss might not feel right, or the marriage might not feel right. Like, so how does one do this deeply and honestly from essence and not blow up their life?
Yeah.
Because I think that holds the key to so much unlocking of so much human potential at scale in this world.
Yeah, I think there's many ways to describe it, but I'm gonna kind of describe it like this. I feel like if this is who we are, when you're basically disconnected from who you are, not only is that creating a lot of chronic stress and chronic inflammation, but that friction is something that when you're interacting with other people, all these emotions come up, and there's this, basically that friction that you're feeling, you think it's coming up between you and these other people.
Right.
And so I think people's like current sentiment is create boundaries, push back, do all these things. And so, if this is you and you're saying like, stay out of my, like you're pushing and creating such hard boundaries, you'll notice that the world pushes back on you. So now you're just kind of like, sometimes it feels like you're pushing against a wall. Sometimes it feels like there's just so much tension and so much friction. And so there's this sense that, oh, this company is the wrong one, this relationship's the wrong one. Like there's all these different pieces. And what I notice is when you start saying, wait a second, let's pause on the external world. That's why we take you through, put you in a safe sandbox outside of your external life world. You're in a very different environment that has no consequences effectively. You can start experimenting, working with the experts and being like, okay, let me actually like move away from, actually, this is a great example. This is my performant, very fancy version. This is my playful minions, inside. To be, okay, I'm not going to throw away the side, and this is not only who I am at the essence, but how do I bring these back and actually like bring them in coherence? And I think that when that happens, you'll notice that your responses to your system is not so hard, and you're not pushing and you're not fighting, because you're not fighting internally. So you don't feel the need to create such harsh limits and black and white, because you don't have to protect yourself anymore. You feel safe, you feel clear, you've accepted yourself. And what I've experienced through my own experience, but also seeing all of our clients go through this and talking to different experts, is there's almost this very natural shift once you are really comfortable with yourself, that other people are somewhat disarmed, and your interactions with them immediately start to change without you even having to say anything or do anything. Because when you're speaking to them, if you feel like they're creating friction or against you, the way you react to them, the way you approach them, whether it's a person or a company, is very different than once you're really in yourself.
I find inner peace. Mm-hmm. If I find self-love, I'm going to radiate differently in every interaction I have.
Very differently. And so I'll give very specific examples. If you're like, oh, this job this works in the toxic environment, I can't, it's just not for me. The difference and people are like, oh, I'll probably leave that job. Actually, what ends up happening could happen. Of course, like you could make the decision to leave as well. But what we found more happens is you don't over-identify with work anymore, where that's who you are, that is what is giving you the external validation of achievement. And because you see it as something very different, as a place to show up and to be a leader, and it's giving you XYZ stability, now your relationship to it is different. So you might not need to leave it, because now you see what it gives you, and you also see what it cannot give you. And you don't look for that there anymore. You look for that in your friendships, in your fun, so now the relationship you have to the things around you starts to shift.
And you're living more whole and more completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How are you using AI and technology in the work that you do? And as you're describing this, mm-hmm. and you're talking about boundaries, because setting boundaries can feel adversarial, mm-hmm. versus just knowing who you are and being clear on who you are to self and living
exactly.
from that place.
Exactly. And
my AI would tell me, Katie, in this relationship, you need to establish a boundary. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. it sounds harsh, meaning cut it off, like right. Be firm.
Yeah.
So how are you using technology? And I want to hear more about what you think about establishing boundaries within our lives.
So from a boundary perspective, I think, it can look the same in the way people say it. So it's more how the intention behind it. And I see it as I'm very clear on who I am and sort of what I will allow as behavior sort of near me. And I think the boundary can look like if someone is operating in a way that is not aligned to my values or is uncomfortable, it's merely stating those and making very clear what my value system is, right? It's not you did something wrong, but this is who I am, this is my values, and this is what I stand for. And
without being adversarial.
Well, being very clear, this is who I am. And like, it's sort of take it or leave it. But it's interesting because if you're not giving them what they want, it kind of just again, I'll give an example. A lot of people talk about narcissists, right? And they're like, oh, I'm in this toxic situation. I said, what's interesting about narcissists, it's a bit of an overused term, but if you're no longer giving them the validation, or you're just saying, okay, well, I don't need to fix that for you. I don't need to do that for you. This is who I am. I don't need to justify to you. I don't need to, make you feel better about that. This is me. Somehow you're not actually giving them what they need. And if they are toxic, or if they are somebody who is trying to take from you, they will go because somebody else is going to give them. They're no longer getting what they need from you, right? So it doesn't have to be I never want to speak to you again, or this or that. It's really just staying really, like you said, congruent and true. And in those moments, it's like you're kind of training people to understand how you want them to interact with you. You're just slightly steering them and saying this and this. And absolutely, sometimes you just need to extract yourself from a situation because you say, this is not okay for me, right? So I'm not saying I'm not saying not to have, a set of clear principles and boundaries that you sit with, but it's how you show up with them.
What I like about and love about this, and I'm reflecting on it from my own journey. I was having this discussion with someone about 6 months ago about the word boundaries, which sound like a fence, a wall. And I said, no, that's not what it means. What it means is protecting the sources of energy that feed me. It means about knowing myself well enough so I know what brings me joy, what brings me rest, what brings me peace. The expression of self that feeds me rather than depletes me. And the more I honor those things, and I'm comfortable sharing what those things are with my partner, with my children, with my colleagues, I love to do this. This doesn't give me energy. I need time. I need space for integration. Without judgment, suddenly you begin to build a way of being that honors your soul and your essence. And for me, it evolved from this, what feels like an adversarial term of boundaries, to one about honoring our own unique way of experiencing self-love and not externally referenced love.
Yes, exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So talk about technology, talk about AI. You're in Silicon Valley. The world is changing so quickly. There are big existential issues that we face in this world. How do you think of that?
Yeah, to me, technology and innovation's always just been a mirror of who we are and where we're looking. So for me, if we look on the societal level, one of the reasons we're doing this work is we very much want to empower the leaders of our world that are shaping our world by the products, the companies, what they're building, right? The regulations, all of these things. The more we're moving from this extractive system into something much more coherent, right? Much more intentional and regenerative, by working on people at really the only place that we have control is how we act, right? Like how we respond, how we make decisions. That's really all we have control over. So if we help people really make decisions from that place that has more sustainability, has more regenerative, has more intentionality to it, then everything that they're building is going to have that same essence and intent behind it. And so as people are having this conversation about, oh, I'm so scared of where AI is going to take us, that is really the question I would say is, okay, so what is our role now? Our role is different. As intelligence becomes a commodity, that is not, we have really made intelligence into a god and said, oh, the most intelligent person should be running our world. And I was like, that is one form of wisdom. That is one part.
Right.
And now we're seeing how scared those people are because AI can do it faster than you. And my point is, don't get scared by that. That is showing us that we are a bit off center from our whole selves. You've spoken about whole self integrated, right? So now let's come back to all these other parts of ourselves beyond just the intellect and start to operate from there. And I think as we bring in that, come back to that sort of morality, the integrity, the humanity, all those pieces along with our intelligence, how do we then use that to develop and create any sort of technology in AI? And in that same way in our company, we are very human first. It's really, and I say that, but I also am thinking about what is our relationship with the earth? What is our relationship? So really in harmony, trying to be in harmony with our entire environment, ourselves, each other, our physical environment as well. So everything that we've built very much is about human interaction and has sort of the human in the loop during your entire journey. And where we bring in AI is to synthesize large pieces of information to help distill it. So in your reports, everyone is coming together. This whole team of experts is coming around and looking at you from different perspectives, which is what allows you to get to that root level. And that's where we can start to use tools like AI to understand how to synthesize, scale, deliver this work. But one of the key things that very few people talk about is, well, why can't I just have AI do this versus these experts? And people often forget that the way we interact with AI, it will bring you to the median, right? So it will give you a recommendation that is the median. We're talking about the world's foremost experts in these spaces who are all very much, we've structured it so that they're individual contributors because they need to be out in the world continually learning and understanding and bringing that back in. Yeah. And so the whole program, everything we build, it's alive and evolving with humanity, right? So 10 years from now, the way we've built it is it's modality agnostic. Doesn't matter what is happening. We are bringing together a group of people that is able to see different models of possibility. And that allows you to not have those blind spots, right? So that allows you to start to see. And as the world evolves, as our own needs evolve, the program and this work of what does it mean to be a human and flourishing in life, that will likely evolve as we evolve. So that evolves with it. So everything needs to be growing.
Take us back. You've had
my own soul.
Yeah. How about?
Yeah. Oh boy. So
take us back. So here you are, Florence. You are building this. The 8-year-old, full expression, unapologetic, radiant being, curious 8-year-old who is this natural draw to human potential and the essence of humans, human design, always thinking about humanity and coming up with your own definition of what I call collapse. The hero's journey. You had a big successful leader inflection point a few years ago. Talk to us about it. Yeah.
So 2.5 years ago, out of nowhere, they told me I have stage 4 cancer. And This was shocking and almost humorous at the same time because I had done everything right by the definition of the system. I grew up in California, so I don't eat sugar, I don't drink, like all the very boring, I'm very like healthy. I was always giving my parents crap about like microwaving plastics or, like all of these types of things where I was like, don't do that, you're going to get cancer. So we have dark humor. So we had a very good laugh about how, of course, they're in their 80s and very healthy. And I'm the one who is repeatedly, on this drum. And I had done all the biohacking, all the longevity. I've worked with various different experts for those 20 years. I think the first time was when I got migraines in my 20s and we didn't know why. So I did every test and they told me, you're probably gluten intolerant. This is 2004. Nobody knew what that was. So I've been working with experts this whole time. And some part of me knew that, and this is why I started the work, that there was something internally, right, that was disconnected. And so when I found this out, I had actually already started building this company. We had been in R&D, and we were just about to launch to our beta clients. And my team said, well, I guess it's time for you to go through the program. Aww. Because clearly you built it for yourself. On some level, you knew you were going to need this. And I think it's very much true. I've always been that canary in the coal mine. I've fallen off every proverbial cliff and then tried to build for myself what's next, which is why I'm leading this company. Even though I am not an expert in it, I am the first customer that really wanted this. And when they told me, I went through three emotions in rapid succession. I went into shock. And then I sort of teared up and I was like, cancer, that's a big word. What does that mean? Like, I think I'm supposed to be upset by this. And then full liberation. And this happened probably in about a 40-second time period. It was very fast. And my whole body relaxed. And people said, well, that's very strange. And I said, well, what came to mind was that I was driving the car of life and the warning lights went off. And I was like, no problem, I can drive. So when my boss told me at Burberry, we're just selling trench coats. Okay, the warning lights are going off. Something's off. I can adjust this, no problem. And I kept driving and I'm adjusting. And then I feel like the windshield cracks. And then I feel like the steam's coming out of the engine and I'm still driving. And I'm like, I'm resilient, no problem. Like everything's great. And by the way, I'm also enjoying my life during this time. And I think the stage 4 cancer was like the wheels just blew off. And I was like, oh, I was supposed to stop driving. It was like this really kind of strangely dark, funny moment where I was like, oh, my response to all of those things was the wrong response. I was not listening to my body and my sort of inner wisdom and voice telling me constantly, pause. Like, just pause and reorient yourself. Like, you're so speeding down and performing in this life, but you haven't stopped to say, like, what life you actually want to be living. Are we even on the right road? And so I think that liberation came with this surrender of, oh, I'm very much clear on what matters to me. The fact that I was in that moment building and doing the exact thing I wanted to be doing also made me realize if I was doing something else, this would have felt very tragic. I would have felt very lost and like, where am I? What am I doing? And I don't know how to even think about it. But because I was exactly where I wanted to be, it just gave me such a deep level of conviction. And then I started going deep on the health stuff and started realizing something that I never knew, which is that being disconnected with who you really are, living out of alignment with your values, actually creates chronic diseases, because you have chronic stress and inflammation that we as high performers normalize. We're like, of course we're tired. Of course our body aches. Of course we get headaches. Like, you just don't even realize how many things that you've just pushed through, because that's what it means to be a leader. You just keep pushing, you keep being more resilient. That's part of your identity. And you don't even realize that you've made that into your identity. So there is no way to give yourself the space to say, actually, this is not working for me anymore. This was great to get me to where I am, but I don't want to identify with this anymore. And so I think in that moment, I really gave myself permission. And so,
Can we pause for a second? Can we pause for a second?
Yes, of course.
Got so many. One, thank you for being vulnerable with us and sharing. And I'm sorry you're going through this. Define values, because I don't think you mean values the way this extractive performative world means values. I've spent the better part of 15 years undoing biases and beliefs that I would have called values 10 years ago. What I call values now are much more emotive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Peace, harmony, love,
Yeah.
morality,
Yeah.
honoring planet, honoring the bumblebee. That makes me cry when I see the beauty of the bee. Like,
Yeah.
tell us what you mean by values, and then I've got another question for you before we carry on.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very much the things that you speak of. I think as we remove those beliefs, a lot of what we think are our values are protection mechanisms or coping strategies. And so most of what I think of is when I think of being in alignment with my values, it's really, in each moment, am I in integrity with how I want to be showing up? And absolutely, it tends to look like having inner peace, showing up with wonder and curiosity, and really appreciating the moment, and then wanting to share that with the other person who is there. And for me specifically, I think there's a lot around that integrity piece. Is when I feel out of alignment with my value system, it's this, my pattern is, am I saying this to make sure that that other person is comfortable? Am I managing them? Am I over functioning in order to ensure that everybody is okay?
Yeah, that's not a bad. That's part of your sacrificing self for love.
Absolutely. And to be able to, which sounds like a very nice thing, right? It's like, oh, I'm thoughtful of you, and sometimes people think these are good values. I need to hold on to these values. And I was like, but that's not really my value. What I was doing there is, in some cases, you had mentioned the sacrifice to love, but it's also, I'm uncomfortable with your reaction to this, so I'm going to keep the peace because I actually don't want to deal with your chaotic reaction. That's not my values. Yeah. And so I do think, to your point, it really comes back to, how do you live in coherence, and that, and you feel it, right? You feel that anchor, that calm, that groundedness in how all your interactions and just how you're being. And when you're not in that coherent place, that is the chronic stress, right? Because you're constantly in friction with your internal self. So your body's constantly fighting itself, or it thinks that it's in some sort of fight or flight, right? So it all comes back to that nervous system. And I was fascinated to realize I had come up with so many pretty great strategies, pretty good coping mechanisms
Me too.
I mean, this is how we become high performing, right? It's like you start to, it's like, don't look under the hood. There's a lot of like, duct tape. There's just a lot of stuff going on.
I used to say one of these days they're going to figure me out and realize that I'm really not that good.
Yeah, it was but yeah, just very freeing, isn't it? To start to live in that essence and in that coherence, and realize you don't need to command the ocean. You don't need to control it. You're just part of it, and to really just flow with it.
All of these coping strategies we build, and this sacrificing for what we call love, all come from fear. They are all survival strategies. They come from fear. Human beings fundamentally are meaning-making, problem-solving, collaborative beings.
Yeah.
And we only know how to solve problems from two places. One from survival, which is ego, which is fear. And the other is from love and from coherence and from curiosity and from kindness and from listening and from empathy. The only thing that's true in this world is love, which is the deeper essence. The rest is all man-made.
Absolutely.
So you found your way to this. I will give you one reaction. You said something. You said something. At Burberry, I was supposed to stop. You did the best you knew how, Florence. And I think every one of us on this show have done the best we know how.
Absolutely.
Yet through stories like yours and through the work that you're doing, Florence, you're bringing awareness of another way of being and thinking about life that may allow others to stop at that point or recalibrate at that point. Yet at the same time, it doesn't mean you should have stopped. You did the best you knew how.
Well, and I wouldn't be here, would I? I wouldn't be doing this.
Well, that's what I'm sitting with is here you are battling stage 4 cancer. A year and a half, 2 years into building this human-centered, heart-centered organization that is committed to what your 8-year-old self was committed to, which is helping humans flourish our way into a more coherent and regenerative way of being.
Yeah.
All of your lived experiences, Florence, are coming to life through who you are today and what you've built. Where are you at now? Talk about your health. How are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm living it. I'm about 5 months after I found out about the cancer. They put me into menopause. Fascinating as a treatment. I did our work, the somatic work, and along with that, so very integrative approach. And I go to MD Anderson. They said, your cancer's gone. I said, well, I didn't know that was an option. And they said, well, stage 4 is never cured, but everything's great. So fast forward, and around November, I started feeling like I think there's an imbalance again. I think there's something out of harmony again. And around November, I started to, again, using sort of our own diagnostic and trying to figure out what is that friction that's still in my system. And we identified it, and I started making shifts to reduce that chronic stress and inflammation that I had now brought into the system as I sort of moved out of coherence. And as I was doing that, went for another PET scan. Every 3-4 months, I have to do these scans to check. And in February, they said, we found 6 new spots in your body. And what's crazy about this is if you map Eastern medicine and how they perceive different parts of the body
Yes.
and what they're trying to say, it was literally the same thing that came up in the diagnostic of what I needed to shift. It was, so what, this is often what I say to people is like, the work we're doing is upstream of then what happens in your body later, right? Because your body is then metabolizing all of that and then it shows up, and which is why we often deal with symptoms, because we don't sense them until they're already here and they've already been acting up.
Our bodies store the incoherence.
Oh, absolutely. For anybody who's read The Body Keeps Score, they know very much, right? So I'm actually in a week, I'm going to see where we're at. And I share this very openly because the idea here is not there's a solve, there's like all of a sudden you can just say, okay, we're done. Like we've learned. I think what's amazing about this is I've been given this really interesting sort of, it's very my personality, extreme accountability to stay in coherence, because as soon as I don't, my body very much tells me so. And I'm walking into next week really not knowing for sure until they tell me what's in the scans. Is the cancer growing? Is it stabilizing? Is it gone again? So I'll be able to tell you in a week. But I think that when we first launched, a lot of people wanted to talk about the cancer as part of the company and all this. And I said, well, you're kind of missing the key point, which is it doesn't really matter, because what matters is that I am enjoying and living every moment of my life and being who I want to be. And that, independent of the cancer, information, risk, whatever chaotic thing is happening, I feel so deeply that I get to be me. And so to be able to feel such peace while all of that is happening, that is what the work has allowed me to come to, that I can be, I am not the cancer. I am not my old performance self. I'm not any of these things. These are just parts of the journey that I am watching and experiencing, and actually in many cases able to enjoy something that people fear and look at it from a very different angle and say, you know what, like anything, this is just a gift. And my relationship to it is going to be love. Because guess what? My body decided to tell me that it is not happy with how I have been incoherently living. And it wants to show me where and help me understand how to really come back to myself.
Wow. Wow, so beautiful. That you're living, that you're enjoying, that you're loving, that you're honoring your own journey, and you're being who you want to be. What's also powerful, and I hope our guests are observing this, is Florence, you've got this remarkable, and my heart is so open for you right now. My heart's open all the time, but I just feel so vulnerable with you in honor of you, as you've got this beautiful ability to self-observe. You know, consciousness is ultimately our ability to observe and be in observation of self. And you do that so peacefully. And when we started our conversation, you just intuitively went to your 8-year-old self.
Mm.
And again, I wrote full expression of self, unapologetic, radiant, and being fully human. And here you are building a beautiful organization to help others flourish. And at the same time, you're holding space for yourself and honoring some of the heavier things that life has the potential to give us. Remarkable. Thank you. Honoring you.
Thank you.
Wow. I have to collect my thoughts here. Wow. Florence, thank you. Thank you for walking us through your life and walking us through the beautiful things you are giving the world through your life and through your lessons and through your gifts. And thank you for letting us see you and witness you on your own journey of experiencing love and joy and, the heaviness of life. It really has been a remarkable conversation. Thank you so much, Florence.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing me through this and just helping me recognize how grateful I am. Yeah, I think for our team, especially, what brings us together is, I guess, this idea that we want to show people what we've learned so that they don't necessarily have to wait as long on the slip. They don't have to fall off so many cliffs, have so many things before we just kind of very softly reroute them from one. I like see it as a conveyor belt of the performative structure that's just about to fall off a cliff. And we're like, no, let's just move you on to the more regenerative one. Like, this is how in the world of AI and all the paradigm shifts we're seeing, this one is going to be, a much better way to experience life and enjoy life. So, yeah, for anyone who's at that point, I think people start to hear the invitation.
Yeah. And you're making that invitation accessible earlier on the journey.
Yes, exactly.
You are defining what life coaching, leadership coaching, renewal, awakening has the potential to be before it needs to be.
And I think even redefining performance, right? Because we think performance is about productivity. But even if we relook at that word, what are people really trying to do with that? Why are you trying to perform? And we all want to experience a wonderful life for ourselves. That's what we're trying to perform, right? And so how do we flip that on its head?
Yeah.
And be truly operating from that clarity. Yeah.
Your life story and your organization are helping people do that, Florence.
Yeah.
And again, I honor you. And like you, I know in the core of my being that a coherent way of being and living is the key to a regenerative world where we live in harmony with self, each other, and nature. And we build systems and machines that support that, not extract from that.
Exactly.
And you're helping build that. And I believe and know in the core of my being that there is unlimited human potential available to us to solve any of the crises that humanity faces.
Absolutely. I mean, we're doing it, right? So like these collaborations, right, with your platform, with our work, with other, that's the idea, is this is not a zero-sum game. So anybody who's interested in this work, we've been starting to collaborate and say, okay, how do we elevate the entire ecosystem?
Exactly.
Because that's what's actually great is there is no limit to the abundance, right?
It is a web of abundance, and it's a web of love and resources and tools to help us all do that. Thank you, Florence. Thanks for joining the Sincerely Show.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here for this conversation. This is exactly why the Sincerely Show exists. To witness real human stories of individuals that have dedicated their life to service and contribution. Stories of people who have walked through darkness and heaviness and found their way back to themselves, to their deeper selves, towards a place that is more whole, and again, to a life of service and contribution. My hope is that something in what you just heard helped you feel less alone, more hopeful, and perhaps closer to meaning and purpose in your own life. This is a judgment-free space. If something moved you, inspired you, or sparked a reflection of your own, I would genuinely love to hear it. Share what this conversation opened in your heart. That is the kind of exchange that makes this community, the Sincerely community, what it is. It's what makes Sincerely, genuinely Sincerely. What I ask is that we hold each other with the same love and kindness that brought us here. This is a place of curiosity, not criticism, of witnessing, not judging. If you are sharing, share from your own experience and from a place of love and kindness. That is always enough. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who you'd like to hear it. That is the most generous thing you can do, not just for the show, but for the people in your life who are quietly looking for this, looking to feel less alone, for hope, for meaning, for lessons. And before we close, this conversation is for reflection and perspective only. It should not be relied upon as therapy or professional advice. Please always seek qualified support where needed before making any decisions based on what you heard here today, or heard or observed at Sincerely overall. This content is also subject to our full terms and conditions, which you can find on our website at sincerelyinc.com. Thank you again for joining the Sincerely Show. Until next time, please take good care. Thank you so much.